Welcome to the Opportunity Podcast, where entrepreneurs come to learn from real buyers, sellers, and industry experts on the lesser-known growth opportunities to build their online business empires. We'll uncover tactics veteran online business entrepreneurs have used to build, buy, flip, and sell their way towards personal wealth. Sit back, grab a coffee, and get ready to uncover hidden growth secrets. The Opportunity Podcast starts now.
Hey everyone, I'm back with another episode of the Opportunity Podcast. It's me, your host, Greg L. Frank, the head of marketing over here at Empire Flippers. And today I am speaking with John Cavendish, the owner of Seller Candy, which is an agency that helps Amazon FBA sellers kind of navigate through the Byzantine nature of Amazon support that can be incredibly frustrating to work with. And I know this firsthand as a business broker myself, not even as a seller, having to deal with their customer support and how terrible it can be. So John talks about how he can alleviate all that stress for you as an FBA seller. And don't worry, if you're not an FBA seller, maybe you're an agency owner or thinking about running your agency. Towards the last half of this podcast, I will be going into a bit of a more of a deep dive with John when it comes to building out an agency. And I think John has a lot of wisdom here to share over his trial by fire as he built his own agency with Seller Candy and the transformations that has gone through. So with all that said, I'm looking forward to you hearing my buddy John speak, and I will be quiet. So I will see you on the other side. All right, I am here with John Cavendish, one of the founders of Seller Candy and a good friend of mine. John has been in Saigon for a long time. Now he's up in Da Nang, but I've known John for many, many years. But John, for my audience that is not familiar with the legend of Cavendish, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Greg. Legend of Cavendish might be different from me, but Cavendishes were the families. They're like a big family in the UK. They owned like Chatsworth House. Like they were one of the old lords of England. And as my dad always says, my granddad was a dock worker. So in some way, some Earl probably impregnated someone and then ended up as a dock worker back several generations ago from me.
Well, I think the dock worker legend is much more fascinating than the other way around. You got to improve your self-esteem, my man.
Okay, from royalty. Sperm, at least, probably at some point. Yeah, so thank you for the intro. As you said, I've been living in Vietnam since 2015, which time has flown by. And yeah, that's it. I started in FBA, and we can talk about that story in this podcast, I guess.
So before we get into Seller Candy, kind of tell me your journey as an Amazon seller. Like, how did it lead? Like, first off, maybe we should describe what Seller Candy is for the audience if they don't know, and then tell me how that all began. Like, what was the journey?
Awesome, sure, I can do. So, Seller Candy, in a nutshell, I believed that the worst part about selling on Amazon is dealing with Amazon themselves. Like, worst part of selling on Amazon is dealing with seller support. So Seller Candy is a service that separates you from Amazon so that you never need to deal with seller support again. So it solves that problem of waking up in the morning, looking at your account, going, oh no, I've got all this stuff I need to get done. I'll just give that to Seller Candy so I can focus on growth and actually growing the business as opposed to, doing daily operating stuff.
All the annoying admin, bureaucratic stuff, the labyrinthine ways of Amazon.
Yeah, so flat files, plans of action, dealing with support, calling seller support. Like, we've got a whole menu on our site, actually. So if anyone likes the idea of that, if they are an FBA seller, you'll only get this if you're an FBA seller. So if you're not a seller, you won't get it. But if you are a seller, go on our website, check out the menu, and do some of the stuff that you don't need to do anymore on a daily basis, basically.
So talk to me how this all came to be. I'm assuming it came from your own experience as like an Amazon seller. What were the obstacles that inspired you here to create Seller Candy?
So going back a couple of steps before that, before I met all the Empire Flippers team back in 2015, I joined an online network called the Dynamite Circle, which you know about, which was a big part of EF as well, and when EF was growing. And I was selling stuff online. I was selling stuff on Amazon. I wanted to make money. I was sitting at my desk in London, an engineering job going, there's got to be more than this. I hate this. And listening to podcasts, just like our podcast now, and somebody was talking about selling on Amazon. And it was basically, I was like, first time ever listening to one of these online podcasts, I was like, I can see how people can make money doing this. I can see about finding the product, placing a product, branding it, and selling it, and how I could do that. because everything else in the past always seemed so like esoteric. I'm a terrible writer. So I tried starting a blog, and that went terribly because I'm not passionate at all about writing. And I can communicate quite well speaking, but writing sucks. I'm like a 10-year-old. So yeah, I saw it. I started doing Amazon, and that's how I got into the kind of the online world.
So as you're growing your Amazon business, I'm assuming you've seen, the good, the bad, and the ugly of Amazon seller support. For someone out there that, maybe they are an FBA seller, or maybe they're thinking about becoming one. Tell me a bit about these kind of experiences. Like, just how bad is it working with the Bezos support team?
Well, for me, like the step before that was that I didn't hire anyone for my business for like 2 years. And that was because I identified as a terrible manager. I didn't know how to manage people. I didn't know how to train. I didn't know that journey going from like an employee and someone who started their first business to like a business leader or even just a manager, to be honest, like step one. And I created Seller Candy because it's a kind of a really cool first step to starting to grow a team, as well as all the amazing stuff that we solve. Because, I was just such a bad manager when I started hiring people 7 years ago.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. We all the terrible things you've said to people, but I've said some terrible things to people before I knew how to manage people properly. And I still think that my core team are amazing people that put up with me. But, I love them and look after them. What was the question, Greg? I've gone completely off track.
Yeah, the seller support stuff with Amazon. Like, I know from my experience as a broker with like how bad it can be, but maybe list out like all the issues of like, why should someone, go and deal with Seller Candy instead of Amazon support? Like, what are the issues that commonly come up?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the good thing is I don't need to persuade anyone that's actually selling on Amazon why they need the service.
They already know. It's quite clear.
They already know. But it's clear why they need it, but they might not be clear what we can do. So things like Amazon flags your listing and says, "Oh, you've got a problem," and they don't tell you what the problem is, but they tell you they're going to suspend it very soon unless you fix it. Or you've got bad account health, so you get an account health notification. It comes up. They say, "Oh, you've got some text in your listing." We're not going to tell you what the text is, but we're going to tell you if you don't remove it, we'll suspend your listing. Then things to like suspended listings, suspended accounts, all the stuff that really weighs on your mind as a seller. But then there's also the everyday stuff, like just updating text on a listing. It used to be super simple back in the day. Now you need to use most of the time like Amazon flat files, which are feed files that you have to basically download Amazon, download a template, upload things, change things, then re-upload it. And we just do all the technical stuff that you don't need to bother learning as you go forward. And the goal is we just save you a couple of hours a day. So stuff that you will be doing as admin, whether it's uploading listings, talking to Amazon or calling them, because a lot of times you have to call them to solve this stuff, but you don't want to be on hold for an hour or 2 or 3. We'll just do all of that. So we'll do all the admin stuff for about the same price as a virtual assistant.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. 2 hours a day. That's actually more than I expected that you'd be dealing with Amazon support on a daily basis. Like, what is that? Like, what are they having you do for 2 hours a day? And does it get worse as you get bigger, or is it kind of the same, whether you're big or small?
I think it comes in seasons and cycles. So, you might go for a month and you're like, oh, I only dealt with a few things. Why have I still got Seller Candy? And the reason you still got Seller Candy is because the next month you go,
like insurance,
a huge pile of stuff comes and you need to respond, which is the issue. So you need to be there, ready to move. And yeah, so some days you might just be arguing for it might take 3 days to solve an issue. And you've wasted 3 days of your time that you were going to spend on growing a business, and you've got to the end of the week and nothing has happened. And other weeks, it might be smooth sailing and we're just in the background. We can kind of back things up in our system because we have a portal. Our clients just back up a load of their nice to haves. So when we're not fighting issues, we just work on the backlog of stuff they've been meaning to do over the last few months.
That makes sense. Yeah. I feel like a lot of FBA sellers, maybe they don't realize it, but that Amazon support can really wreck a business if you're not handling it well. I remember we sold I think it was a $1.7 million FBA business, and the Amazon support's like, no, you can't sell Amazon accounts. Like, what do you mean? We're not selling an Amazon account. We're selling a business. They're like, no, you're selling an account. They have that to protect against fraud. It makes sense, but it's just bureaucratic nightmare that's literally stopping this guy from getting $1.8 million, right? So we had to keep going up the chain. I mean, it took us probably a week before we finally talked to a guy, and we had to get it in writing because otherwise Amazon's bureaucracy may not know we even had this conversation and just like cancel the account, right? So yeah, like even on the brokering side, dealing with support is quite a hassle. So yeah,
I get it.
talk to me a bit about Amazon account health. So for someone that is not familiar with how Amazon seller account health works, why don't you describe that a little bit? Like what makes a good health score? What makes a bad health score?
Good question. So, I mean, the good thing about Amazon Health Score is it literally shows it in the back of your account. So you go to your account health section and you can see your score and then your violations. Unfortunately, if you're an FBA seller, there shouldn't really be any valid violations unless you're shipping like faulty products in some way, unless your products are actually faulty. So a lot of what comes up is, customers wanting to return things, but not wanting to pay the postage, customers making false claims, stuff that Amazon knows is happening because, I may have been guilty in the past of a customer, if the company doesn't want to receive it back, but if it's something wrong with it,
nightmare.
being an FBA seller's nightmare. I mean, I'm sure we all have. If someone just refuses to accept it, they just change the reason. So you've got to be careful for that stuff. And then it's voice of the customer. So there's another section there called voice of the customer. And that's where you can look at each level on each of your SKUs, each of your products and go, okay, well, these are the upcoming issues. Like we've had this many returns on this SKU. We've had this many people complain about this specific issue on this SKU. And it's something we might have to look at now before it gets to Amazon's threshold. And they go, we're going to suspend this ASIN until you fix it. Our goal is any of our clients should never have a suspended account ever because we're there to keep an eye on it. And suspended ASINs, we always get them back. Unless the product is actually physically faulty, we always get suspended ASINs back.
Have you actually dealt with account suspension and helped the account get reinstated?
Several times, yes. It's not our speciality though. Like the problem is when somebody comes to you in account suspension, it tends to be they've done everything and then you're the last resort. And that means that they've gone down. Yeah. And it means they've gone down and they said things they shouldn't have said usually on the way through by like begging or by saying, I won't do that again. So if our client was to get suspended, we 100% will help. I think we've only ever had one that I can think of client suspended. And that was because the client went on holiday, didn't tell us, didn't mark their account as on holiday mode, and they didn't respond to anything for 2 weeks. So, we got it back, but that was, their fault.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, account suspensions, if you do have an account suspension, you should come and talk to us, talk to Kelly on our team, see if it's the right thing we can help with. And we will take the issue, we'll talk to our technical team, and then we'll make sure we can solve it before we take the issue on. We're very much on a case-by-case basis with that.
So for a seller, so the reason why I'm asking this, because there's a lady I know, she had her account suspended, profitable FBA business, probably like high six figures, a little bit over seven figures actually. So her account got suspended, and then it took her, when I talked to her, her account had been suspended at that point for 2 months. It took her for another month to finally get reinstated. And I wonder if she kind of did what you said, where she said the wrong thing to them. So like, I wonder if the more pragmatic thing for an FBA seller that has this happen is like, before you say anything to Amazon, reach out to someone who like knows.
That's a good idea. I mean, talk to us, talk to riverbend.com. They're great on that as well. Talk to the people who know what they're doing on account suspensions and see, it doesn't cost you anything to talk to somebody. And another 5 hours isn't going to make any difference in your response.
Yeah, very true. I think that's a wise thing to do. It's kind of like Facebook too, like Facebook's customer service.
Facebook would work.
Oh, dude, it's so bad. Like you have to kind of talk around the issue and frame it in such a way where it doesn't like trigger some algorithmic ban hammer. So I've definitely seen stuff like that. I ran an EF ad once where they banned the ad because it was selling supplements, and there was like nothing related to supplements, but because of this like ban, I had to like work my way around, like just kind of like obfuscate a reason to the support to get it like unbanned, which is a big hassle and big time suck, which again is probably why Seller Candy exists. So
yeah, I was going to say they need us for Facebook too, because we just had a massive Facebook issue where we had one ads account and the pixel wasn't on the ads account that we were using somehow. So we just blasted $7,000 into the ether with no learning. And they said, oh yeah, it wasn't connected. And we're like, well, could you help us in some way connect it? And they couldn't figure it out on their end. So we had to fix it ourselves. And now they're not going to give us that $7,000 back that we just
no.
just blasted into nothingness. It's just like, it just sucks, you know?
Yeah, I had a very similar issue. Luckily, I didn't end up spending, I think I spent like $100, something like that, but before I caught it. But it's a very similar issue, and Facebook couldn't figure it out. In fact, I was on the phone with them. I refused to get off the phone with them until we did figure it out, which they did not like. But then I'm the one who found the setting. Like, they were telling me I need to create a whole new ad account, whole new business page, blah, blah, blah. And then I found this like one esoteric setting that when I changed it, it finally switched. I was like, dude, like, how did I find this? Like, I know nothing about this. I'm an SEO, not a Facebook marketer. So they ended up giving me a $500 credit, which was nice.
Oh, nice. I want some
It
of
was
that.
very unexpected. Yeah. So we're moving into probably the greatest season to be an e-commerce seller, and probably one of the more stressful ones, Q4 with the holidays. So
Yeah.
what do you recommend for Amazon sellers to do during Q4 to ensure, smooth operations, maximize sales during this time?
So I would recommend, when's this podcast coming out?
It's going to come out January 1st of next year, because I only want my guests to feel like their information is completely out of date.
Exactly.
No, it should be coming out here 2 weeks from the time of this.
In 2 weeks. All right. So I go back in time about a month and make sure that I've ordered my inventory. Number one is don't run out of stock. Number one, I jest. But yeah, make sure that you've projected out your inventory. If you've been selling already for a year, which hopefully you have, look at previous years, figure out, what's the ratio between the first half of the year and last year and where you think the end of the year will be. And make sure you've got inventory in, because number one thing, like bad weather hits, something goes slow, you run out of inventory, you don't make your sales during the most, heavy, profitable time of year, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and then work out your Black Friday, Cyber Monday strategy early on. I'm not an expert on that. You can listen to a million podcasts from all of the influencers in the space about how you should prepare for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. From my experience as a seller, heavy discounts might increase volume, but they don't usually increase profits because you've given them. But yeah, I think it's all just about getting everything lined up and making sure you have inventory in place, suppliers like us in place should anything go down, and just go for it as hard as possible.
The inventory one, I think, is always a fascinating one, especially I think smaller FBA sellers in particular struggle with this. So do you have any tips on like how you'd go about forecasting and projecting like how much inventory you would need? Because obviously you need to factor in how much you sold, but then your growth goals and weather issues or any other cataclysm. So how's your mentality on that?
I think for me, it depends on shelf life of your inventory and cash flow. Because at the end of the day, if you know your business is going to continue and the product lasts for years, depending, if it lasts for 5 years, then it's all about cash flowing the inventory. So, do you want to take debt? I'm not a big fan of debt, but debt is needed sometimes in e-com. Can you negotiate payment terms? I'm a big fan of payment terms. So if you've got suppliers telling them, this is what's going on, will you manufacture now, hold it in China, for example, with me paying a 20% deposit, or hold it somewhere else? And just get more produced than you need potentially. There's a big caveat to that, which is, look at your previous year's data, look at this year's data, and just look at the trend. And Seller Candy can actually help with that as well. We have a data team who can look at your last year's sales and help you with projecting out this year's Q4 sales, which I should have said before. But yeah, we can also help you with that.
Super valuable.
That's super valuable.
That might be more valuable.
It's just something we do as a side.
Support.
That's not our main service. But yeah, we have a data team. We can produce inventory projection for you.
So in my experience of having sold hundreds of FBA businesses at this point, is a very common thing I see is when we do the valuation, I have this business buyer, he's bought many of them from me, and he said something to me that was very funny and very true. He's like, I love all these Amazon FBA sellers. They're all young, making crazy amounts of money, and they're all completely broke because they just don't know like how to manage their cash flow with the inventory and like plan out. So a lot of times when we do their valuation, they find out that they're not making nearly as much money as they thought. They're kind of similar to what you said with the discount, right? You think that's going to increase volume, and it does, but doesn't necessarily increase profit, right? So I think that's a very valuable service because a lot of people mess up the projections. With Seller Candy, so you see under the hood, I'm assuming like pretty decently far with a lot of your clients. I'm assuming that you're giving you some sort of access to their Amazon Seller Central so that you can actually see like real revenue data. In your view, what is like the common trait between all these Amazon sellers that are successful versus the ones that are, have room to grow, let's say.
Well, we don't see revenue data. We don't ask to see revenue data for our clients, but we need access to the account. And we have a system where we have like our project managers go in at a certain level with certain permissions. So they can access things like, flat files and things they need to have. And then we can have managers who can grant high levels of access if needed. Because that's how we manage, how we manage our team and making sure everything's secure and safe. What do successful businesses have in common? So that's a very good question when it comes to Amazon, because there's so many different archetypes and people who are successful in the Amazon space. I mean, there's the traditional bigger seller. They have a real team. They're a professional team of employees, and which is fine. We do a great job for them. We help them grow. We help them do their operations, and they're actually easiest clients because they're not personally they don't see the money as coming out of their pocket. Then there's the first time entrepreneur, like you said, and I love them because that was me when I started doing it. And we can guide them more, and this is how you should think about this. This is how you should grow. As with all of our first businesses, there's a feeling of it's my money, which comes with, the business money is my money, which is true. But at the same time, that needs to be a mental separation as you go further in business. Otherwise, it makes you anxious. And this is my hallucination. Makes you anxious, makes you think about every nickel where you might be missing out on the bills, which are over here with much less stress.
Yeah.
So what keeps them in common? I mean, the traditional FBA business of low SKUs, very big, very deep in the niche. We still have plenty of clients like that. And more so now as well, we've got larger clients as well who are doing reselling or consignment, or they're selling multiple brands on behalf of other brands because, things are consolidating. Just like your guy buying up later FBA businesses. I'm sure he has a good ops team. He doesn't do anything himself.
Let's not say that. He's a good buyer.
All right. Well, hopefully he doesn't listen to the podcast. Tell him he should sell a candy.
He knows his weaknesses. I always give him crap for it. He's a really good dude. I think his ops team is better now than it used to be, but he was one of those, what I call the spreadsheet jockeys, growth all the time. Well, it looks good on a spreadsheet until you start implementing some of that. But he is a very good buyer now.
At what rate? Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Who you borrow it from.
I think what you said there, I want to double click in about the cash and the business being yours. I think that's actually a really good mindset thing for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially people who are looking at buying a business as their way to entrepreneurship. Is I see a lot of newbie buyers, they'll look at a business on Empire Flippers. Oh, this is making $20K a month. Now I'm going to be making multiple six figures a year the moment I buy this. No, man, that's not the way it works. That $20K a month, that's money to pay you and the taxes that you owe, but also your growth. So maybe you don't want to grow anymore, you can take $20K a month out of the business, but really it's $8K a month that you were going to be getting because you need all the rest of it to manage the storms of business, right? So I think that's a good thing to think about. The cash flow of the business isn't necessarily cash flow in your wallet.
It depends on the business model. Yeah. And I've learned a lot. So a little bit further in my journey after the e-com side, when I started an agency, I learned a lot about cash flow management.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
And, accounts receivable, accounts payable, which we can all talk about. But basically these days, I wouldn't start a business where you don't have accounts receivable at the start of the month. So you get your money at the start of the month, then pretty much cash in the bank is profit. As long as you can collect automatically. It's the whole journey from having to chase people for money to going, oh yeah, the payment terms are up front and everyone accepts that. Makes things much, much easier and much lower stress in doing business outside of e-commerce.
Oh, absolutely. I want to get into the agency side, but before I do, a couple of more FBA questions. So now with all your wisdom and knowledge, what do you wish you would have known as a seller way back in the day when you first started?
Way back in the day when I started, which I think the landscape has changed since then. Now I would have made $10 million. Back then, made $1 million, whatever. But I would have doubled down when things were going well. When things are going well, that's the time to not take money out of the business and just reinvest and double down. Hard to say when you have no money, because I was back there in 2015 and I had 20 grand in the bank. So I was looking for security, take it out until I got to a couple $100 grand. But now I would double down because it would have grown exponentially faster when the market was quite not so saturated, for example. It doesn't mean you can't launch now, but FBA is no longer a golden ticket. If you're in there, that's awesome. And you've got momentum and revenue, that's cool. Just keep going with it. But I wouldn't say it's the easy way to make money online like it was back in 2015 to 2018.
Yeah, I would agree with that. No longer the golden ticket, more the golden cuffs, with Bezos fines getting higher and higher in some aspects. I always joke that my FBA friends have the same problem as my affiliate SEO friends, where they're so reliant on like Google or Amazon. Like the moment anything happens, like, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to like close down your business, or you're going to pay the increased inventory fees. So I always tell people, like, you should diversify your business. I was having this conversation with this other FBA influencer, and I was telling him, like, traffic diversity is like really, really important. Like having your own DTC brand, like trying to figure out a way to make that work, where Amazon is important, but it's ultimately just another like acquisition channel at the end of the day for you. Like that should be the goal. And he told me a lot of FBA people can't do that. And I don't think he liked my response, because he's not wrong. Because a lot of FBA businesses, they get all this margin because of like all the crazy work that Amazon is doing for you, right? And it's hard to replicate that with DTC sometimes. But I told him, like, well, at the end of the day, that makes it a more fragile business because of that, which he didn't respond to because he knew I was right.
Yeah, and that's the reason you get 2.5 to 3.5x rather than 10x.
Yeah,
8x,
exactly. Yeah. DTC will almost always get a better multiple. So
well, that's true. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and that's definitely true. And on top of that, these people probably wouldn't have businesses without Amazon opportunity being.
Oh yeah,
because what we did back in the day was we looked for a gap in the market and we launched a product to fulfill the gap in the Amazon marketplace. So there was no question of us ever thinking about acquiring a client profitably outside the Amazon marketplace. It was like, I see a gap and I'm going to just make the most amazing product for this gap and make $1 million from this product. And as long as you did that and then you managed to either get out or sell it before, or just keep it, running stably,
right,
and that's fine. But it's not going to make you more than $10 million. And I've got friends that have sold for 10, but I don't know anyone that sold for more than that.
Yeah, the biggest business we did have a $20 million FBA business, but that one didn't end up going through. It fell out in the last inning, but we just sold a $13 million business, but that wasn't FBA. That was DTC eCommerce, right? And I think you're right. Like Amazon provides, and still to this day, I think it's probably easier to start an FBA business than a DTC store. But in the grand scheme of things, like which one is easier to migrate away from? Like, is it easier to go to DTC to FBA or FBA to DTC? I think it's way easier to go DTC to FBA because, like,
100%.
You already learned the harder skills. In my view, like creating funnels, making all that stuff work on your own. And Amazon does do a great job for people. So they do a lot of heavy lifting. So, well, with that said, I'm curious, like, we've talked about how FBA is a lot more saturated, a lot more competitive now. In your view, where do you see the FBA industry going for the rest of the year, 2025, into the future? What trends are you seeing?
I think personally, obviously, it's going to continue because Amazon is a behemoth and is still going to make up 50% of the US's online sales and the rest of the world's online sales. Continue to consolidate. So, more competent, experienced people are going to be continuing to launch products and brands because you can still continue to launch products and brands, and Seller Candy is there to serve them. I don't think many of these make money on FBA courses and influencers are going to, well, they're still going to be there, but they're probably going to pivot to other platforms.
Oh, yeah.
TikTok, I think, being the next / current gold mine. And we'll see. Seller Candy is always going to have a business because Amazon's support is not getting any better. It's getting slower.
I imagine it's getting worse. Yes.
It's getting worse.
Yeah. I think you solve a very niche need that is also extremely important with Seller Candy because, like, so much of an entrepreneur's mind, and this from being an entrepreneur yourself, is just like segregated into so many different buckets all at once that you have to deal with, right? And just like having someone that's competent dealing with arguably one of the more annoying parts of your FBA business, I think is extremely valuable. So yeah, I think you'll be
someone
fine.
You need to train.
Yeah,
someone you don't need to train or hire or look after in any way. Because you want to have amazing relationships in business, but you want to have those with the people doing the operations of your business at the highest level. People doing the admin stuff are just management headache.
Speaking of headache, let's transition a bit because I have a few questions for you on the agency side of things, what you've done in the agency world. So why did you go into arguably one of the more headache-filled businesses that people moan about when they become a successful agency owner? Talk to me about this. How did it happen?
I didn't originally.
Accidental
So that was
agency owner. All right.
no. I know. I went to agency, but I didn't originally go into what we do right now, which is dealing with Amazon seller support. Sorry, just to comment, I see you drinking a Highlands, which is like absolute rocket fuel.
Yes, it is. For my viewers out
I'm
there.
having a bathroom break at some point.
For my viewers out there, John also knows the power of Vietnamese cafe soda. So that's the coffee here. Coffee around the world tastes like water to me now. So when I'm outside of Vietnam, I ironically barely drink coffee now.
Oh yeah, because you sip too much of it, and then you feel like the endorphins and the euphoria rising, and then the crash afterwards.
The cafe soda, you just get the anxiety attack later in the night. It's fine.
Yeah. All right. Sorry for slight segue there. Yeah, so I did a lot of personal development back from 2018 to 2020. It's like a couple of years. I did a lot of Tony Robbins. I got super into Tony Robbins. Actually, by accident with my friends. I was in Vietnam looking at Facebook, and there's a Facebook ad for a Tony Robbins event in Singapore. So me and my friend Vincent went across to Singapore, went to the event. We were like, this is amazing. If the rest of the events are anything like this, it's going to be phenomenal. So we bought the tickets and we went around the world and went to all of his events, one of each of his events in a year. And one of my biggest breakthroughs and takeaways there was that I wasn't having fun with my previous FBA business because I'd done it for 3-4 years. We were selling supplements. I wasn't adding value to the world particularly. I felt like I was just making money. And one thing that Tony said at one of the events was, the more people you can impact, the more money you can make, and, doing something good for people. And I was like, all right, I always said before I'd never start an agency because I don't like the agency model. I'll never start an agency. And so I started a full service Amazon marketing agency that did everything from content creation to advertising to what we do now, but that's like a tiny part of it. And just like every other Amazon entrepreneur or most other Amazon entrepreneurs, it's my first business. So I had no skills in sales, marketing, operations, management, nothing. So I was there for the first 6 months just going like, if we do an amazing service, we'll get more clients. Which, if anyone's ever started an agency or business before, realize you get a couple, but it will take forever to grow that way.
You build it, that doesn't mean they will come.
You build it, they will not come. Not unless you tell them.
Yeah.
Greg, the marketer. You should have told me then. So I got a sales coach. After 6 months of pain, I found a sales coach. I found a guy in the DC, actually, John Logar. I'm sure you've met John.
Very cool guy.
Yeah, he's very cool. Amazing guy. Started working with him very quickly, sorted out my offer, doubled my prices, closed $1 million worth of like ARR business over the next year. And then as I was doing that, I was like, I don't want to scale this business model. This business model sucks because you need super smart strategists in the delivery part who are very expensive, mostly Westerners. And it's going to be very complicated and hard to scale. And I was having this crisis of identity of what I was going to do with it. About 6 months later, when I was traveling around Europe and I was in Portugal, I meeting up with some other guys in the community. And one of these guys was called Ian Hawley, who started a company called Hubsnacks, who later spoke at another event that we went to. And he was telling me about the productized service model, and the model being that you find a platform. He had a platform, he had HubSpot, and it's a complicated platform that people pay a lot of money for, and they need to get problems solved. So he built this service that surrounds the platform and helps people and adds massive value. So I was thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And I was on the plane back from Portugal to the UK with my now wife, then girlfriend. And I was like, we could do the same thing for Amazon. We could create a service that surrounds the platform because everyone hates dealing with it. That solves all the problems that people don't want to do and adds massive value. And the cool thing about that is we don't need experts in everything to work for us. We just need experts in Seller Central and dealing with these issues. So yeah, fast forward a bit, another messing around, figuring out the offer and everything, and started hiring. We realized we could hire directly out of Amazon, which was our shortcut to getting trained people. Amazon has a bunch of support centers in the Philippines. And we literally hired people who'd got like more than 3 years experience working on the other side, on the Amazon side, brought them on to work for us. They work from home. We pay them better. We look after them better. And yeah, that's how we delivered amazing service because we literally hired people from Amazon support themselves.
I want to stop you right there for a second. That is a brilliant little hack, hiring from Amazon. Like I'm sure your Filipino friends have said this to you too, but my Filipino friends, they hate working in these like BPOs, the call centers, right? That a lot of these big tech
Yeah.
giants create. It's just like not a very fun environment, not great. So talk to me how you found them. Like, do you run like an ad in Manila? Like, do you work at Amazon? Come work for me
That would be
instead.
a
Like, how
great
did you
one.
find them?
By accident. By accident to start with. So to start with, this was back in 2020. And we just started running ads on online jobs, running ads on LinkedIn. I think probably it's just online jobs to start with. Bunch of applicants, and we got a few ex-Amazon seller support agents apply who left to become VAs. And the good thing about good people is they all know good people and they still have their friends. So after that, we just started rewarding people based on hires that pass probation. Everyone refers their friends. We have a very, very high standard that we hold people to. So they pass tests and 4 interviews and the skills assessment and 2 weeks training and then probation. And then the person that refers them gets, I don't know, a couple $100 or something. Anyway, what saves us a bunch of money compared to hiring and, going outbound for all of this. Everyone knows everyone. So it becomes a little community that everyone brings more people into. And we have 40 something agents now. So there's a bunch of them.
You should make a course, and the copywriting headline is Amazon BBO call centers hates this man. Here's why.
It's a very good idea, actually.
I'm here for more bad marketing consultation advice, my friend. I think that's cool, man. Like, one of the issues I find a lot of Westerners have with hiring VAs is like they often think like, oh, these VAs are like unskilled, all this stuff. Like, well, you're also paying them $3 an hour. So like, well, how skilled are they going to be? And they often treat the VAs kind of bad. So like Filipinos, a lot of times they have like kind of a mixed feeling about being a VA. They don't like it because often the Western person also mistreats them. Just like the Western feels like they're getting abused because the work's not getting done. So I assume you're paying better than a normal VA. You already said you're paying better than what Amazon was doing. So talk to me a bit about that, like building this culture, because a lot of people do struggle to build out, a Filipino team or any offshore team. So,
oh yeah, I mean, we could have a whole 5-episode series about building Filipino teams and the pluses and minuses of it. Yeah, I mean, anyone that's hired a VA from the Philippines and had a good experience, great for you. Bad experience is most people had both, even if you only had like people. So I'm just trying to how to phrase this right. What you need if you've got a large Filipino team is a Filipino management team, because the frontline people are amazing and they will have some amazing people there who will rise up to the ranks. But some people, their mindset, they even call themselves rank and file employees, which makes me cringe. And they're from the BPO industry. So they expect to be managed by KPIs and like aggressively managed and penalized. And like, we come from the West where that kind of culture is like
not a thing.
Yeah, and I don't penalize at seller candy, apart from, losing your job eventually if you don't do a good job, like everyone. But I've had so many debates with my leadership team because they want to implement like negative penalizations for things because it's the culture. I've got some amazing senior leaders, like Filipino senior management, and they get paid well, very well for the Philippines. So, anywhere up to a couple of $1,000s a month, which is not huge for everywhere else, but, $2,000-$3,000 a month for top people. And then agents are paid less than $1,000. But, you get what you paid for, with people. It sounds weird. But you get what you paid for with employees. And then they will, the good people, especially in operations, aren't money driven. They're culture driven. Money is a byproduct and you've got to pay them properly, but they'll stay because of you. And if you treat them well, mentor them, look after them, I love my senior leaders and I hope they work with me in this business and then in any future businesses because they're the reason that I don't go crazy on a daily basis.
I think that is a very wise statement that a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about. Like, entrepreneurs, I want to say entrepreneurs are always money driven, but there's always a bit of that, right? As part of the ambition of building something. But a lot of them, they think like, well, I'll just pay them more and the problem will go away. Like, well, if you have a cultural issue, I'm not talking about like culture differences between America and Philippines, but just like a work culture in general. Like
money doesn't help.
Yeah, money is a hygiene thing. Like it's like brushing your teeth. At a certain point, you're not going to brush your teeth like 10 times and be more productive, right? And it's just enough to where they don't have to think about it. So it allows them to have the trade-off, which is the security of a paycheck, a steady paycheck, where they don't have to think about like their finances, right? Because you're taking care of them. Like that's the point you're trying to get to with most employees. So I think that's a wise thing to say. Rather than 11, why are you doing it 10 times more and paying 6 figures? So as you've grown your agency, there's always a balancing issue. And you kind of brought it up when you were doing the full service thing, which is such a common issue with agencies. Like I talked to the founder, you're very, very wise, very smart strategist. I come on as a client, you give me to like the brand new employee because like I'm only paying you $1,000 a month. So now like all the heavy skill, which was you, is gone because I'm dealing with a junior employee. So there's always this balance of like how you like have the high skill person teaching the low skill person who's doing the actual like kind of work. Talk to me a bit on how that was like when you were doing the full service stuff and how that's changed now that you're more productized.
Yeah. So that's actually a very good split. There's a better word for split, but yeah, a very good split between before and after. Sorry, dichotomy. That's too big a word. There's somewhere in the middle is a medium.
These $20 words of mine.
Distinction.
There you go.
It's a $13 word. Good distinction, because back in the day when I was doing that, I was the strategist and I was all right. But, back then I was pretty good at what I was doing. But yeah, as you said, I would then need to talk to the client, synthesize it, and then give it to the team. Well, the way I've developed as an entrepreneur since then is I am no longer the expert when it comes to Amazon. I can talk about it. I can know what needs to be done. But if you want to ask me to do it, I would take forever in actually doing the work. Doing the work is done by our team who is super competent. So we have JC on our team. She's head of service and quality. So she's the one that actually checks that, she's in charge of the SOPs and the service and making sure we're delivering a high quality product. We have Viv, who's in charge of people and culture. So she's in charge of making sure that everyone's, doing coaching properly. Feedback is there. The culture's there in the way it should be, and that our team leaders are up to standard. And then you never even meet me in Seller Candy. You would never meet me because we have our sales guy. He's amazing. He closes at a much higher level than I ever would. And I stole him from you. Oh yeah, Kelly.
Yes. That's a tip from my audience. If you want to hire good employees, just poach them from the Empire.
I didn't poach them. But he used to work for you in the past.
Yeah. Good guy.
He's amazing. Okay, I love Kelly, yeah. So it's building a system. I see business more as a system now than I did before. Before I was like, how can I make myself 20 grand a month or 10 grand a month? Now I'm like, how can I build a system that can run without me? And if we've got a gap somewhere, who can I bring in to close the gap? Like, who can I bring in as like a teacher or a consultant to close the gap for me for this part of the business? Because if I do it, I'm doing it as me, who's the scrappy guy who'll try and duct tape it together. I need to bring in someone who's professional. Who's a professional who's not going to just duct tape the thing together and actually, sometimes I worry about, my worry would be like, should I be doing more? And then I'm like, no, actually, I should be doing what I'm doing now because we're building this business to be able to deliver a high quality product. So it's more, I monitor the quality of the product, the client feedback. And as you said, sometimes the client will come in and we do have a miss. So it's more about how do we stop that miss from ever happening again?
Right.
And is it almost always it's a communication issue?
Yep.
As I say to my team all the time, it doesn't matter how hard you're doing things unless you're communicating what you're doing to people. Then they won't know what you're doing. And this is, we live in Vietnam. Very common problem in Vietnam. People won't tell you. They'll be like, I did all this. And like, yeah, but you never told me you did it, which is why I've been following up with you every day.
Aggressively.
Aggressively following up because I'm used to having people in my life that I just hand something to and they, and say, can you let me know in 3 days? And they'll let me know in 3 days.
Yeah. There's a great post I saw on LinkedIn about agency owners. Like, if you do 10 out of 10 work, but you don't communicate effectively to your client, the client's going to fire you. If you do like 6 out of 10 work, but you communicate great, the client is probably going to keep you because like they're in it with you. Like they understand, like not suggesting anyone do 6 out of 10 work, obviously, but that just shows you the power of communication. I think that is pretty true. Like it's better almost to always over communicate than under communicate in a lot of these situations, especially in a service business. So yeah.
And do an amazing job. That's the lesson from agencies. You have to do an amazing job. An amazing job is whatever is one step past expectations, because satisfied customers leave, raving fans stay. The satisfied customers, satisfied, then they go. That's what they do.
5-star on Trustpilot, go off on their merry way. Yeah. So the other thing, we're about to get into the rapid fire section here. I want to steer that back towards like FBA sellers. But before we do, like just talking about the system thing that you're talking about. So a lot of times entrepreneurs ask me like, how do I make my business more valuable? Right. That's a very common question I get for exiting. And I always do a tongue-in-cheek joke like, well, how important are you to the business? Like, are you useless to your own business? And, sometimes the entrepreneur ego-driven side, like, oh, no, I'm the linchpin. I do X, Y, and Z, all this stuff. Like, I'm super important. Like, okay, well, you have a very, like, low-value business then. Like, your goal should be, like, everything you do as an entrepreneur, like, if your plan is to sell it at least, should be to try to make you the least useful player on the team. Like, that's the goal. So, and the way you do that is with systems. So I think that's very wise thing that you've come to, because a lot of entrepreneurs never get there, especially with agencies, man. They're always so personality based. So it's good to hear that you're not doing that.
Thanks. And for that, it's hiring systems driven people for me. Like, I'm not a very good systems guy. I will admit that, I'm not being, whatever that word is. I can't do English today. Maybe we should do this in Vietnamese. I'm not being, yeah, joy. But yeah. Anyway, I'm not trying to downplay what I can do. I'm okay, but I'm not really syndrome engineer. I'm not a systems guy. I'm a great problem solver, but not a systems guy. So I bought in, some people who've got experience in it. I bought in a Six Sigma black belt project manager. I bought in a bunch of people to build these systems and SOPs, and then consultants to make sure they're following them properly. And that was my biggest lesson: is hire, rev up the revenue high enough to be able to hire good people, and then bring in the good people and let them, build the rest of it.
I think that's great, man. I always say like there's like 4 main wealth building skills in my view in our modern era. Like from weakest to strongest is like coding, sales. Like coding is a very distant fourth in my view. And then marketing is a distant second. But the first one that's like by far the best is delegation. And I saw this guy's podcast. He has like 6 different businesses. And the guy asked him like, how do you do that? Like, I am taking up all my time just running this one business. And the guy responded with a brilliant answer that I think is very true. He's like, well, it's actually easier to run more than one business because I don't have enough time to really think about just this one business all the time. So I have to create these systems for other people to think about these businesses. And I kind of do nothing. I'm just like a glorified project manager at this point, which I think is like the end game of entrepreneurship. I think you're well on your way, my friend. All right, man. Well, we're coming towards the end of the podcast. I want to move into the rapid fire section where we bring it back to some of the Amazon FBA sellers listening to this crowd. So I'm going to ask you 3 quick questions and you give me 3 quick answers. So are you ready, my friend?
I am ready. I actually don't know what's coming. So let's see.
Well, luckily you already answered one of them. That was the first question. So good job. No, all right. Rapid fire section. What, in your view, is the best hidden growth opportunity for selling on Amazon today?
TikTok traffic.
Like TikTok Shop, I assume, stuff like that.
Is it rapid fire? Do you want a long answer?
No, that's fine. You're making me fail the rapid fire.
Buying influencer posts about your product, which drive traffic back to your listing. Buying influencer content specifically, because influencers can move like 20 grand of product in a weekend if you can get the right influencer to post your product. TikTok Shop, maybe. Whether it's TikTok Shop or whether it's just paying them enough money to talk about your product so that it pushes a load of product.
100%. Getting influencers and creators on board, I 100% agree with that. What tools or resources can people use to help optimize their FBA business?
All the normal ones. So, I mean, if you know about FBA, they're all right.
Just do a Google
search.
Check
out the Seller Candy podcast. We have BidX on. I've been talking about FBA about ads recently. They're a great ads provider. We've also got Chris Rawlings on from Sophie Society talking about ads on our podcast tomorrow. So yeah, get a good ads manager, whether it's a provider who you trust and you can explain to you what their strategy is going to be. Then monitoring software, whatever software you want to use, some dashboarding software, something like Sellerboard, and then Data Dive, Helium 10, whatever tools you want to use for product research. I mean, they're all pretty standard now, and there's cemented leaders in the industry. So there's no hacks anymore in what tools you should use. Just pick ones you like and pay for them.
Yeah, it makes sense. All right. Hardest question, last question. What has been your funniest moment since you started working in the Amazon industry and the whole digital entrepreneurship space?
My funniest moment was at Prosper Show last year that I can remember. My business partner for our refunds product, Refundify, in one of the parties with all the influencers in the industry, they were like pumping music. One of the women said they wanted to do limbo. So he ran up to somebody, ripped off their belt, and then they started, he's got the best energy ever, started a limbo station in the middle of the dance floor in this Vegas penthouse, like 18th floor, like Barbara Streisand's penthouse in the MGM Grand. And then like, just, I've got the best video ever, which will never go onto social media.
Oh, you should put that on the sales page of Refundify. Like, our customers are so thrilled they're doing limbo in Barbara Streisand's penthouse.
Well, that was Alex, actually. You know Alex.
Yeah. I'm going to have to ask him about doing a potential limbo dance next time I see him. And I had no idea.
He's the best. That was my funniest in-person moment, yeah.
That's awesome. All right, man. Well, we're at the end of the podcast. I really enjoyed this. I think there's a lot of valuable stuff in here for my audience, both for the FBA people and people thinking about starting an agency. Because I'm a bit of a fanboy of the agency model if you do it right. There's a lot of ways to do it wrong. So I'm glad we got to talk about that. For anyone that wants to connect with you, John, like, where should they go to pick your brain? Maybe they want to reach out to you about your services or just connect.
Awesome. So, if you want to email me, you can just drop me an email, john@salacandy.com. You can check out our website. You should check out Refundify. So just as an aside, the Amazon's reimbursement services, Amazon is changing their rules on October 23rd and basically going to mean that you can't go back 18 months anymore. You can go back 2 months. So if you haven't got a reimbursement provider, you need to take action now. Maybe we can talk about that afterwards because we should probably do a blast to your list if you haven't already.
Yeah.
It's a last minute thing.
That. Yeah. We should put that in our Twinma newsletter.
That's a great idea. And then we also, you were talking about hiring virtual assistants. We have a service that helps people hire virtual assistants, whether it's for Amazon or for actually any platform. And that's called Magnet VA. So magnetva.com. If you're looking to hire a virtual assistant, then that is the place where you can go and check out. And we can help you get any kind of VA, whether it's Amazon or not.
Awesome. Well, we'll put all those links in the show notes. And John, always a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, always a pleasure. See you, Greg.
There you have it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it got you inspired at all the different things that are happening in this industry. And of course, if you just want to buy a highly profitable business, you can always go to empireflippers.com/marketplace, or maybe you want to make an exit of your highly profitable business, and you could go to empireflippers.com/sell-your-site. I've been your host, Greg. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review, give us a like, a follow, share it across social media. Talk to you all soon. See you on the next episode.